All right, we are recording, so this will be on YouTube later for everyone. So my name is Juan Hidakadis. I'm the Ninth Ward council person. Thanks for coming to the Ninth Ward meeting. I will start things off by handing things to Officer Basner.
How you doing? I'm Officer Bazner with the Evanston Police Department. I've been part of the department for the better part of 17 years. Some of you, I've seen some familiar faces. I'm recently assigned in the last year to the community policing unit. As part of that, what we do is I reach out to our local aldermen or council members and say, hey, do you want a safety report for your ward, which is generally crime statistics for the last month or month and a half or so. So you guys get an idea what's going on in your area. And with that, we get our statistics from our crime analysts. So any report that comes into the agency, if it involves the Ninth Ward or any wards that I'm a part of, which are 4, 8, and 9, I will get those reports prior to the meeting and I'll do a short presentation. What I'll generally preface this with, so I don't have to go on my soapbox and rant, is generally when we talk about crimes and crime statistics, and a lot of it is theft. A lot of it is burglary, which is the primary theme you'll see here in a minute. Please lock your doors, lock your belongings away, take them out of your car, and do not leave your keys in your car. That is the primary way like people get their cars stolen. So that's my little soapbox for this, and I'll go into the report from, we're talking November 1st of this year to December 10th. Some of the crimes that we had for the month include a couple assaults, 5 reported batteries, some of which ended up in like a larger event, which you'll see here in a second. 1 commercial burglary, 1 garage burglary, vehicle burglary, criminal damage to property, graffiti. What we got? Let me hide this. 1 outside stolen vehicle was recovered. Looks like there was 2 motor vehicle thefts, 1 shots fired incident with no evidence of shots fired. 2 other thefts, which is the other thefts are usually like retail theft. 3 catalytic converter thefts, and obviously again retail theft here. So other thefts might be lost or mislaid property. It just depends on how it's categorized. Yes. So the big difference between assault and battery is defined by the state of Illinois. Assault is an action in which somebody feels they're about to be battered. So the law defines it as reasonable apprehension of receiving a battery. So the best way I describe it is if, hey, I'm going to beat you up. If I just said that standing here, do you really believe that? Probably not, right? But well, Lucas does. But if I coupled that with some action, step towards you and raised a fist, now you would feel assaulted, right? So that's assault. Battery is the unwanted physical contact. So any unwanted physical contact is defined as battery. Okay. November 17, 24, there's a physical fight between a bunch of unknown subjects on the 400 block of Custer, and no one was seriously injured. Several additional batteries were reported that involved staff and other residents. There were no serious injuries. So that's where those batteries came from. Those are our crimes against persons, which is not fairly bad in this case. Nothing really crazy. The 2 motor vehicle thefts we had was one on the 1st of November. Guy was doing a delivery, left his keys in his car running. So that's what happens. And then December 8th, looks like a Hyundai was located in 900 block of Monroe with the window shattered and the steering wheel column stripped. So somebody attempted a theft there or had stolen the car and ditched it there. One of those 2. Commercial burglary, unknown subjects attempted forced entry in a 500 block of Hartree into an auto shop there. There's a garage burglary, unsecured garage, where a dirt bike was stolen in the 1400 block of Washington. So lock your garages. And then a vehicle burglary, 1 unsecured vehicle in the 800 block of Elmwood entered and personal documents were taken. So another reason why to not leave personal documents in your vehicles. I've seen it time and time again. It's easily done. I get it. We're going to and from places. We leave stuff in the cars. Check your cars before every night, or just make it a habit not to leave those things in your car. Catalytic converter thefts. This has been a historic thing in Evanston on the south end for a long time. Generally, it just depends on the type of car. I know Priuses were hot for a long time. It's the metal inside the converter that they want. They want the metal so that they can go sell it and get money for it. 3 vehicles, other related retail, and there was other retail thefts from other locations in the area. So that's all I got in regards to that. I think that's it. That's all we got going. Not a whole lot crime related as far as the Ninth Ward goes. Do we have any other questions regarding safety or law enforcement related stuff?
First of all, did the police department used to have issue monthly reports because of staff problems? I haven't seen one in a while.
I'll tell you is if you go to the city's website, they actually issue a weekly report.
Uh-huh.
If you sign up for the email, if you go to the city's website, look up the weekly crime report, you'll get an email of all the week's crimes and where in the area it took place. So it'll be by police beat, but it'll also have the city address on there, so you'll be able to.
Also, I live on South Boulevard, east of Dodge, and I get these quote emails, South Boulevard alerts, and they cover a broad spectrum of things, including police problems. And I didn't see on there supposedly there was either a house break-in or burglary at 2200 West Oakton Street, and so. You know, it reports within X distance of my house, et cetera, this happened. Well, so I sort of have that.
That's good to have. Neighborhood email chains are always good to do. That way you kind of know what's going on in your neighborhood. I know people do use ring groups and all that sort of thing to communicate. So that's always good information to have for yourselves. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe this is
So they can hear your question.
this might not be specific to Ninth Ward, but is bike theft a big issue in Evanston or not so much? Just curious.
Yeah, theft happens all over the city of Evanston. It's just theft's a crime of opportunity. So if stuff's left out, a lot of theft does happen out of our retail stores. That's the majority of it. But yeah, theft is always a common theme. Oh, bike theft? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, bicycle theft. Bicycle theft has been a constant theme. There's really no uptick that I'm aware of. And usually if there is an uptick, it happens in the downtown area where bikes are locked up and secured. Sometimes thieves are very innovative and they have ways to defeat locks and cut locks off and steal bikes, but no recent uptick in bike theft as of late. Anybody else? Any questions, comments, concerns? No? I'll turn it over back to Councilmember Heraclitus.
And Officer Basmer, just a quick question. Is EPD considering doing another spray paint catalytic converter event? That's something that is on the horizon.
We've done in the past.
Yeah.
And we're still weighing the success of that program. Although there was at least one or two recorded events where there was an attempt on a catalytic converter and they didn't succeed only because they noticed probably the paint and they stopped what they were doing. But I would argue that the better deterrent for a catalytic converter theft is to go to your local auto place and get a cage installed on your catalytic converter, because then that's additional metal around the converter that they have to try to cut through, which is going to cut down on time. And these thieves want to get in and get out. They don't want to be exposed or caught. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And next up, we have a presentation from our sustainability staff. I'll pull up the presentation.
All right, excellent. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Councilmember Hadakadis, for having us here. My name is Kirsten Drehobel, and I am a Sustainability and Resilience Specialist with the City of Evanston. This is my colleague, Ben Martin, who is also a Sustainability and Resilience Specialist. We're really excited to talk to you tonight about the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. And if at any point anybody can't hear me, please feel free to speak up. I don't know. Hi, everybody online. So to get started with, as many of you know, Evanston is committed to thinking globally and acting locally. Our climate action and resilience plan is based on science from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC. And these include goals to decrease global carbon pollution by 48% from 2019 levels by 2030, to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050, and post 2050 to achieve net negative carbon emissions. And from there, CARP mirrors those goals, so reducing building energy consumption by 35% from 2005 levels by 2035, and reducing building energy consumption by 50% by 2050, and then finally reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So here we are going to speak a little bit about our energy. Actually, Ben, if you wanted to go a little into this for me.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. So our energy and water benchmarking ordinance is the base for our healthy buildings ordinance. I'm just going to call it benchmarking ordinance. Moving on, the benchmarking ordinance was passed in 2016. It generally applies to buildings over 20,000 square feet. There's about 500 buildings that meet that criteria in Evanston. Generally, these buildings are on the eastern part of Evanston. Sorry, the map's a little small, but somewhere along there is kind of like the majority are on the east part. There's a variety in the number of buildings per ward. So here we have about 40 covered buildings, but it goes all the way up to 91 in the 7th ward, where that's a large portion of those 71 are, or 91, sorry, are Northwestern's campus. And what this ordinance requires is that these large buildings report to the city their energy and water use. So that's typically natural gas, electricity, and then water. And that allows the city to move forward with ordinances like the Healthy Buildings Ordinance, which we'll learn about in a couple slides.
So we prepared a few examples of buildings that would be covered under, or that are currently covered under benchmarking, the benchmarking ordinance, and would be covered under the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. And these are the Home Depot, which is 163,000 square feet, as well as 1101 Washington Street, which is 67,000 square feet.
Sorry, I'll speak to this one. I was having trouble trying to find a nice image for you all to understand the size of these buildings that we're talking about, but it turns out the building that we're in is actually a great example, where this building is about 22,000 square feet. So it's right on that threshold. So if that helps paint a picture in your mind, the size of buildings that we're talking about. So no single family homes.
It's also important to note that we do hold city buildings to a higher standard. We benchmark city buildings at 10,000 square feet, and the proposed Healthy Buildings Ordinance would cover city buildings over 10,000 square feet as well. So we know that emissions reductions will not be enough without addressing the existing buildings. Currently, 80% of emissions in Evanston come from buildings, and our replacement rate of buildings, demolition, and new construction is less than 2% per year, which leaves a lot of outdated technology in our current building stock. And we know that our natural gas use has remained approximately constant for 20 years. We can see variations in the usage year over year, but that is mostly due to different weather patterns. So if a winter, for example, is colder, we might use more natural gas. But overall, not a ton of variation. And we do know that natural gas intensity will never approach zero. So in order for us to reduce our emissions, we need to reduce natural gas usage. Ben, did you want to-
So what is the Healthy Buildings Ordinance? In short, again, we're talking about that threshold cutoff of buildings over 20,000 square feet. And the Healthy Buildings Ordinance would establish 3 performance metrics. And the first being, trying to keep this all at a high level, happy to go into more details as requested, but the first performance metric would be that buildings must be efficient. So in the year 2050, our buildings that are over 20,000 square feet are efficient. Next is buildings must eliminate their on-site and district system emissions. What this means is you can't have combustion happening inside your building. That means no natural gas use. Third is buildings must solely procure renewable electricity. This one's a little bit wonky, but in short, it means that we're no longer receiving electricity from coal, natural gas, or nuclear electricity generation. And this final point here is really important because it allows us to move towards this 25-year timeline in an equitable and community prioritized way. So this ordinance will create at least 2 new public bodies. The first, actually, we'll talk more about them in detail later, sorry. And these 2 bodies will be empowered to lead us through a rulemaking process. So they'll provide technical and equity expertise that allows us to balance the tough challenge of equitably and timely decarbonizing our buildings. And if I didn't say it, these 2 groups would be stipend supported. We know that it's a lot of effort to participate, to even be here at things like ward meetings. We want to compensate people for that effort.
Yes, and by doing that, we want to make sure that those folks that maybe couldn't be in the room otherwise, maybe due to financial constraints, have the ability to be there. So equity is at the forefront of our decision-making process throughout drafting this ordinance. So here we have an overview, a timeline of the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. So if this were to pass, the rulemaking process would be approximately from 2025 to 2026. And then each year we would have annual benchmarking as usual. These are the pink dots. 2030 would be the first interim standard, ensuring that progress towards final standards is being made. Again, annual benchmarking as usual, and then every 5 years, there would be an interim standard. Ben spoke a little bit about our boards. These interim standards would be decided by the community. We really want to make sure that we're getting a lot of community input and all stakeholders are able to help determine what those targets would be. This isn't just going to be the government saying you have to meet these interim standards. We're making sure that this is an equitable process. And then finally in 2050, we have our final standards, which are defined as Ben mentioned previously. Ben, I'll pass it to you.
So what's not in the Healthy Buildings Ordinance? The ordinance is relatively high level. It has those 3 performance metrics, will establish public bodies, and a lot of the nuance is left to that rulemaking process. That way it's community led. So the Healthy Buildings Ordinance will not address every nuanced circumstance in submetered building. We understand that buildings are really complicated and we have hundreds of buildings that we need to deal with. So the ordinance will set up processes to take in special requests. And we need to recognize that buildings are complicated and some of them are going to need to be treated on a case-by-case basis. Next is how alternative compliance can be reached. So similar to that first piece, right? You might have a complicated building. You might be on a different timeline than the city is working with, or you might think that, oh, I just can't reach that energy efficiency metric that you've set up. The technical committee, a public body, will be establishing a form or process to intake special requests so that a building might say, that timeline doesn't work for me, but here's what I can do instead. And that way it's the community determining what kind of things are we willing to flex on. Next is specifically defining who will benefit from available support funds. In particular, the city will have funds available to support this work. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those funds are later. But again, we want the community to decide who's getting prioritized. So that might be receiving dedicated funds for an upfront cost of a project, a technical audit, just receiving staff time. And next, prescribing what a building must do to reach compliance. Well, we prescribe sort of the high level metrics that need to be reached. We won't be prescribing something like that might be a no-brainer, like use LED light bulbs. That kind of flexibility is left up to the building owner and manager for them to determine what's their best path to reach those standards. And last, if you look at this as a silo, you miss the bigger picture, which is this is part of a portfolio approach. There's a suite of policies at play. There is multiple different teams, levels of government. And so if you look at this in just a silo, you're kind of missing a bigger picture, which we'll talk a little bit more about our policy-wide approach. So.
Okay, so you might be wondering why buildings over 20,000 square feet. And nearly half of Evanston's community-wide emissions come from buildings over 20,000 square feet. Less than half of all buildings make up the vast majority of total community square footage. And Ben, if you want to go ahead and explain, I think you do a good job of talking about the specificity of the graph.
It's a little hard to read. So we have two different graphics going on here. This one is the number of buildings in Evanston. And this hashed out part is buildings that aren't covered by the ordinance. So we see the minority of buildings in Evanston outside of single family homes are covered by this ordinance, but they make up the majority of the square footage in Evanston. So we're able to tackle, we're able to do this in an efficient way.
So the Healthy Buildings Ordinance does more than just reduce emissions. It improves air quality. We know that reduced indoor and outdoor pollution will lessen exposure to harmful toxins. A lot of people are worried about the effects of breathing natural gas in the home. And there are many studies that we have looked into and cited in our ordinance regarding how harmful it is to have a natural gas hookup in your home for health effects, specifically with upper respiratory issues. We're also looking to build local capacity. We know that increased clean energy workforce benefits local workers, and this will benefit contractors with new trainings and job opportunities. So people looking to get into the field, and also those contractors that are already doing this work will receive training and initiatives to get more people out there. We're also looking to empower the community. So as we've talked a bit about, the stipend supported process facilitates the community decision-making process. This ordinance would also optimize systems, so improved heating, cooling, ventilation. We know that this uses less energy and allows for more tenant control in a unit. And like I alluded to, this leads to reduced utility costs. So increasing your efficiency at the end of the day means a lower utility bill for the tenant. Big question is probably, how are we going to pay for this? So starting off, the city and these groups would be facilitating access to low-cost financing, such as low and no interest loans, as well as an energy-efficient mortgage. This is a way to say that an entity applying for such an energy efficient mortgage would receive capital upfront from an entity like a climate bank. And instead of paying a set amount over time, or like a monthly payment that's the same amount, you would pay the difference in your utility bills. So if your utility bill is a high amount or a certain amount starting off, we know that by making these investments, it'll lower your utility bill, and you would then pay the difference until that upfront cost is then paid off. This is a really exciting and new way to finance projects like these, and we're really excited to partner with the Illinois Climate Bank, one such entity that is looking to offer solutions like this. This would also mean something like a green leasing adoption. This is a lease agreement designed to align tenant and landlord interests around environmentally friendly measures. We've been hearing a lot from the community that people are interested in a lease or entering into an agreement with a building that, or with a realtor and management group that has green interests in mind. So like I mentioned, this is maybe not having natural gas hookups in the unit, or making sure that units are energy efficient, or that they're not using fossil fuels. More and more people are interested in making this a reality. We're also looking at creative funding. This would be community-led and city-supported solutions to procure funding for affected buildings. There's a lot of money out there for this right now, state, regional, and other types of grants, as well as other solutions that we're working with our partners to come up with funds to make sure that buildings would be able to pay for this. Additionally, we know that equipment is going to have to be replaced. So this is already a cost consideration, and the replacement can happen at the end of a device's natural life. So like Ben had talked about with alternative compliance pathways, say a building just installed a boiler a few years ago, and we know that that boiler has a useful life of 20 years. That building can then apply for an alternative compliance pathway, which means that they might not meet that interim target that's coming up, but they know that they'll have to replace their boiler in 20 years, so that replacement will happen at that time, and then they will meet the next performance standard. Finally, we have upfront capital. So like we alluded to, we have financial support for community decided equity priority buildings, and we're looking forward to acquiring more in the future. That'll be one of the things that our boards focus on, is acquiring capital for buildings. Additionally, housing is a fundamental consideration. We know that that is a big worry for a lot of people. We are focusing on housing protection. So the community-led body is empowered to suggest synergistic policies, such as rent protection and anti-displacement policies that might already be considered by the city. This looks like alignment with other city plans too. So it is a citywide goal to increase housing options, to improve urban planning, and to have a healthy and decarbonized building stock. I know a lot of you are probably here to talk about and learn more about Envision Evanston 2045. And these are synergistic policies. Everything that we're talking about is going to align with the comprehensive plan going forward. We're looking to build long-term building resilience. So like we said, equipment replacement is inevitable, and buildings and tenants need better, longer lasting, healthier equipment. That's an outcome of this ordinance. And I think it bears repeating, this would result in lower monthly bills. Increased efficiency means lower utility bills. We are committed to supporting you. So recently our team applied for, received and negotiated a grant for over $10 million from the Department of Energy, which will support the adoption and implementation of the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. We are super excited to sign the contract for this, which will be hopefully before the end of the year. And our approach is going to prioritize equity, reduce technical and financial hurdles, empower the community through rulemaking and stipend-supported groups, increase local capacity through workforce developments, recognize complexity, and ensure adequate city staff capacity. So everything that we've been talking about throughout this grant is going to support. And these are just a few of our partners. You can view this slide. I don't want to read through all of them. You can view the slideshow on our website if you Google the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. But this is a combination of national, regional, and local partnerships. Just to point out a few, the Rebuilding Exchange and Climate Action Evanston. So we are very excited and grateful for all the partners and all of the work that all the support we've had on this. And then finally, we are not alone. Building performance standards are a growing movement. And this map shows 20% of the US population being a part of a jurisdiction that has committed to doing a building performance standard like the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. This graphic is from one of our partners, actually, the IMT, or the Institute for Market Transformation. So they wrote the sorry about that. So they wrote a template ordinance that we followed and made sure to tailor to Evanston specific needs. But we are very grateful for their support and are looking forward to working with them moving forward. But I'm sure that there are questions. So please, at this time, if you have any questions for us, we'll take them.
Thank you. First of all, may I say that all of this is very idealistic, and I'm a mechanical engineer with 61 years of experience. I was a licensed professional engineer from 1974 to 2005. My license is inactive now, and I've been involved in environmental for a long period of time. First of all, using this, I won't be around in 2050. I'd be 109 years old. Okay. And so obviously I'm concerned about young people and you, including my daughters and granddaughters and hopefully a great grandchild. All right. Anyway, I call these projected predictions, and this is all based on present technology. And in about 6 weeks, we're going to get a surprise here on January 20th and beyond. And so I strongly suggest that all plans, and not only what you're presenting, even our alderman here, et cetera, with the city of Evanston, just put this aside. Because there's going to be a lot of uncertainties that enter into this. Not taking notes, sorry. You're talking about buildings 20,000 feet in area. This has come up before, about 10 years ago, but without the knowledge that we have today. Considering energy and water, where you have a 20,000 square foot building with condominiums, how are you going to force condominium owners to use less water and less energy? Let me finish, and then if that's all right, okay? And then you want to fully electrify everything using renewable energy. When the wind doesn't blow, you don't get that form of energy. When the sun doesn't shine. And so you're talking about bringing up a system that will provide continuous electricity for our needs, and that is not in place now. And will it happen? I don't know. Anyway, I can go on and on. I don't want to take up the time here. Okay.
Well, first off, thank you. On the point about condominiums, our team is well aware and concerned about housing, in particular condos and co-ops that are in that threshold. So one barrier or kind of safe protection against those affordable housing options that's built in place is a 50,000 square foot threshold. So condos and co-ops below 50,000 square feet won't be a part of this ordinance. That is part of the legacy benchmarking ordinance, where the city council at the time took that into consideration and ended up removing, I think, hundreds of buildings with that. The next is there's a built-in clause to our draft ordinance that allows some flexibility for condos. So one thing that the staff find is reasonable is that a shared system in a condo should be likely covered by this ordinance. But individual systems, now we're basically talking about regulating single family homes, and that's not the intention of the ordinance. So the first piece, right, we're removing a lot of condos and co-ops from being considered via the 50,000 square foot threshold for them. The next piece is a flexibility piece that allows these types of like housing units to request that they are considered differently. And so that is built into the ordinance throughout, where we're trying to set this up so that we make sure we do this equitably and justly, but that we also have these really complicated climate goals that we have to reach at the same time. So it's a really tough balancing act. So I appreciate you pointing that out. And I'm going to move on to the renewables piece. So you're right, there are challenges about renewables, and there are different trade-offs between different ways of getting electricity. This approach, again, is flexible in recognizing that we're at a turning point in a lot of these technologies. So the interim performance standards are going to allow this progression towards our known end goal, which is clean, reliable, safe, affordable electricity and living. So this approach really takes into consideration the concerns that you've brought up. It's hard to see it in just the slideshow. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I missed it, but is there have an estimated number of how big the carbon footprint is? Let's say it's, we have an estimate of Evanston itself, and how much of it is the big buildings and how much of it is the small.
Sure. So we do have a good estimate for that. That's actually a lot of what my job is. So through the benchmarking ordinance, we've been collecting the energy data, so natural gas and electricity use. We have almost all of the covered buildings have reported at least once, so we have a pretty good estimate on that. We estimate that the covered buildings list, the buildings that we're talking about regulating, are almost half of Evanston's citywide emissions. The exact number of metric tons of CO2 equivalent, I do not know off the top of my head.
So happening in parallel to all this, we also have the Green Homes project. It used to be called the One Stop Shop, but some of the ARPA money that we have set aside is to help lower income homeowners retrofit their homes. And through that program, we're really like trying to build like a playbook for homeowners on how you do, make your home more efficient and, green your living space. That, we were delayed, but that's been starting to happen. So alongside kind of the capacity building for the bigger buildings, we're also hoping to do like workforce development with small contractors. So we have people in the community that know how to do this. And I can't remember exactly the number, but when you take out city-owned buildings, the majority of the carbon footprint is, everyone else. So, it's kind of an overwhelming step for homeowners to jump into, but we're hoping that through this sort of work, we kind of learn more, and then we'll hopefully soon, once we go through that, first wave of one-stop shop retrofits, that we'll have more information to share. But, all this is
buildings in the area, that we can look at our own bills and our own the summarization of what we're using. So helpful in this regard if we did this.
Yeah, because it is hard to know how you fit into the whole bigger picture, but that's a really good point.
I just wanted to add to that. Climate Action Evanston is actually working to have, well, I don't know if they've started, Paula, if you know, the climate ambassadors or the energy ambassadors are doing more homeowner outreach and are available to help create a plan and talk more with homeowners about what decarbonizing a single family home looks like. So that's another great opportunity. I was going to say, I can give you my information, or Paula, if you're comfortable talking more about it. Sorry.
It started small. So far, I think the only climate ambassador tabling that's been done is at the farmers market, specifically in solar. But there will be additional opportunities to have public meetings where people can come about for someone who can install a heat pump, what was involved, what it cost, how long it would take, heat pump water heater, options are available, what that cost, what things are available, things like that. I think we're probably going to see some of that coming up shortly at the first of the year. And if you look at the Climate Action Evanston newsletter, you can subscribe to their newsletter, and once a month they do a newsletter with events coming up. So that should be happening. I think versus we have well, I think so. There are some things coming out in the first quarter.
Absolutely. Any more questions? And thank you very much, Paula, for the information.
Just so I sort of see this as all of the different pieces, the puzzle pieces going together. And how does Northwestern? I know Northwestern doesn't fall under your purview, but are they like working with you? Are they doing analysis? Are they like studying and providing their measures to you all so that you can see? And let me just ask one more question. Robert Crown, like how does it rate? I know it was finished several years ago, but do you have any like information on how it's functioning or how it would fit into the ordinance?
Sure. So I'll answer the first part of your question, and I'll let Ben answer the second part. So Northwestern they do benchmark under this ordinance, and they would be subject to the Healthy Buildings Ordinance. So any of their buildings over 20,000 square feet would fall under the same requirements. As to their involvement or studies that they do, they are a part of their Sustainability Institute is a part of our grant. They will be doing studies on, and maybe I'll defer this to Ben too. I'll just like.
I think we should talk about it in the new year about Northwestern's research participation. But yes, so Northwestern is covered, so they would be regulated by this, including their central utility plan. And that's part of the reason why our second performance metric extends the building to the district systems that they're serviced by. As far as Robert Crown's performance, we do not exist within the facilities department, which I think might be able to better answer your question, but I'm happy to make that information public. I do have access to like the natural gas, electricity, and water use of the building, and it's meant to be public. But off the top of my head, I can't really put it in perspective how the building is performing. So I'm happy to follow up.
So one of the things I've asked staff to do is I've talked to City Manager Stowe. We used to have a pretty robust open data portal on our website, but with staffing difficulties, that has not been updated. And one of the things I've talked to him about is having these type of benchmark metrics for all our buildings, so we can show like how we're doing. And also, a lot of this stuff, like, there's a return on investment if you're efficient. So, it's continual improvement. So it'd be great to see like what our energy usage is at Crown. And then we'll be putting solar on the roof relatively soon. That agreement's signed. It took forever to get signed, but that'll happen. And so it'll be really great to have those numbers where you can just look at a chart and see like, oh, these are the changes we made and this is the impact it's having. So that's hopefully, I know there's a really big website overhaul happening, but once that's kind of in the works, the open data is a priority.
So District 65 and ETHS also would be governed under the Healthy Buildings Ordinance, and we have started meeting with them. We have met with them to discuss this and anticipate working a lot with them moving forward.
I had a really good conversation with the ETHS high school facilities folks, and they actually do some really exciting things about building usage on off hours. And so they're, I think, doing a really great job from what I could tell. But yeah, we need everybody doing this work, which is really important. So.
Anyone else? Online? Okay. Yeah. So if you need more information, feel free to reach out to us or check out our website.
You can email us at sustainability@cityofevanston.org with any questions, or just go on our website. All of our info's there. But thanks all for listening. Are you sure?
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, go. All set. Awesome. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Liz Williams. I'm the planning manager for the city of Evanston, and I'm here representing the Envision Evanston 2045 planning team. So it's not just me who's working on us. There's a large team of staff as well. So let me quick move this out of the way so you can see this. Is that okay for those in the room? So what is Envision Evanston 2045? It is a once in a generation opportunity to look at the city's comprehensive plan. So that is basically our shared vision for how we would like to see the community develop over time. And it also includes a rewrite of the city's zoning code, which was last rewritten in 1993. So I'm sure you can imagine back to 1993, the world was a very different place. The community's needs were likely very different. And our plans and our rules to implement that plan have not been updated since that time. So this is our opportunity to work together to take a look at the future, things that might impact the community, and update our plans and our rules to achieve what we all want to see happen. This is not advancing. Sorry about that. There we go. I'll click. So how did we get to this point of having a draft plan and draft zoning code? So back earlier this year, we started community engagement and really focused on lived experiences here in Evanston. So what do you love about Evanston? What challenges are you experiencing in Evanston? And what is your vision for the future? In addition to that, we also worked with the community to develop a vision statement and some preliminary goals around which we all want to work towards achieving. And then later in June and July, we actually took a look at some different alternative scenarios for future planning. And we also went out in the community, met people at various events, various locations, and validated that not only are we hearing from everybody, as many people as we can in this process, but also making sure that what we're hearing accurately reflects community needs. So based on the first 3 phases of engagement, we had well over 3,000 community members participate. There were approximately 80 meetings held during these 3 phases. And essentially what it resulted in was a draft vision statement, which is up here on the screen. I'm happy to read that if folks in the room can't see it well. But would you like me to really quickly? No? Okay. But it really hits on a lot of the priorities that we heard from community members early on in the process. This vision statement was actually drafted by community members. And then, as I mentioned, we shared it out and it was refined and tweaked based on that process. In addition, there were several goals that were identified that the community was looking to achieve over the next 20 years. So promote community health and well-being, boost our local economic resilience and growth, champion environmental sustainability and climate action, expand and enhance our transportation choices, diversify housing options for all income levels, ensure equitable access to opportunities and resources, and support and celebrate arts, culture, and creative expression. So those were the results of community engagement at this point. We're here tonight to hear feedback on what we've been hearing. Is there anything missing? Are there any concerns that you have about these overarching goals? And how can we work together to refine it prior to the City Council taking this up later next year? So I'm just going to quickly go through the various chapters of the plan and kind of hit on some of the key points. Out of curiosity, who has read the draft plan? Okay, couple hands up. So the first chapter really focuses on that vision for Evanston in 2045. It really is an aspirational plan. And I will say this plan has something for everybody. If you're interested in economic development, if you're interested in housing, if you're interested in transportation, parks and open space, this plan touches on all of those priorities in the community and pulls together and identifies some policies of how we're going to work together to achieve it. As was mentioned by the previous staff that presented on the Healthy Building Ordinance, environmental leadership has become an emerging theme as part of this planning process, and really wanting to emphasize decarbonization, renewable energy, infrastructure resilience to help mitigate for those climate impacts that are anticipated. In addition, connectivity and accessibility are big themes of the plan, ensuring that our transportation systems are safe, affordable, and then also accessible to everybody depending on their age and ability. So the next chapter really focuses on future land use strategy, which is an approach of how we will develop over the next 20 years. So the draft plan focuses on a centers and corridor framework, which basically what that means is we have districts across the community, centers that would accommodate a mix of uses, including housing, and also along our major corridors such as Chicago Avenue, Central Street, Main Street, Howard. Those are also promoting a mix of uses that allow for people to work, shop, play, enjoy life, all within that same location. The future land use map, which I'll show in just a second, essentially helps to guide development. It balances our environmental, economic, and community needs and is kind of that overarching strategy for where we envision having, lower intensity housing, where we want to see those mixed use centers and corridors being located. And that map is just a guide for future investment over time. Chapter 2 also goes into some land use policies, which again promote health, sustainability, and equitable access to housing, recreation, and business opportunities. So here is a example of the future land use map. I know it's really hard to see on the screen. This is also available if you go online to envisionevanston2045.com. There'll be a kind of I would say, somewhat annoying pop-up that shows up on the page when you land there. Just click the X and scroll down a little bit, and it's right there on that home page. The future land use map really, as I mentioned, breaks down things into different intensity of residential uses. It also touches on our mixed use districts, downtown, and is really there to inform the development of our zoning code, which is another aspect I'll get into. So moving along to transportation, again, the plan prioritizes transportation choice, basically recognizing that we need to invest in all types of transportation modes, with an emphasis on upgrading our infrastructure to reduce car dependency and emissions. It also focuses on safety and accessibility. We've heard a lot from community members that it can be difficult to walk, bike throughout the community. So we need to invest in more infrastructure to support safe and inclusive spaces for all ages and abilities. And again, you'll note the carbon neutrality goal here, really encouraging the transition to electric vehicles, and transit decarbonization, parking management reform. Again, this all aligns with the city's current climate action and resiliency plan. Parks and open space. So staff admittedly in the current draft feels like this is an area where the consultant team can continue to elaborate. But currently it does prioritize inclusive access, recognizing the need for climate adaptation, and also that we need to make sure that our community is engaged whenever we are looking at our public spaces, not only for stewardship, but also for helping to support design and implementation, so that we all are able to have access to those amenities. The environment chapter, again, focuses on sustainability leadership, commits to that carbon neutrality goal by 2050, which we just talked about in terms of our climate action plan. It emphasizes renewable energy, green infrastructure, and climate resilience in planning. It also talks a lot about resource conservation and making sure that we protect our lakefront and increase biodiversity through our practices. So making sure that our landscaping that we're putting in is natural and helping to encourage stormwater management. It also focuses on waste reduction. So this again plays into the climate action and resiliency plan for reducing recycling, composting, looking at deconstruction versus demolition, to try to promote a circular economy and reduced landfill dependency. Economic development, we're almost there, I promise. It really focuses on the local economy and supporting small minority-owned and women-owned businesses through financial incentives and streamlining our development processes. This is really important. We hear a lot that the community does not want to see more what is known as formula businesses. So, your fast food or, your common retailers that you see across the country. We really want to support our local small businesses here. Well, our current rules make it really difficult for local businesses to realize opportunities in the community. And those that are able to navigate the process are those that can hire attorneys, engineers, and it takes a lot of time. And so the incentive right now is kind of leaning towards those formula businesses, and the plan and the zoning regulations are going to try to support streamlining that so that we can see more and realize more local businesses. It also focuses on job creation and downtown revitalization. We've heard a lot about the downtown and wanting to see the energy and vibrancy kind of return post-COVID. Chapter 7 focuses on housing. As I mentioned earlier, housing choice, housing diversity, and housing supply are really the priority here. We already have a very diverse mix of housing options here in Evanston, and the goal here is to continue to increase our supply of diverse housing. in terms of size, again, and this meets our community needs. We also focus on displacement prevention. So there are policies to help protect residents from having to relocate due to housing constraints. And then, as was mentioned earlier, we're really trying to promote energy efficient and resilient housing to align with CARP and our E-Plan. Placemaking, arts, and culture. The plan really focuses on celebrating arts and culture, making sure that we are supporting inclusive and diverse cultural expressions and events that strengthen our community bonds. We hear all the time that people love, the diversity of Evanston and the fact that there's so many different cultural expressions and a lot of history. And so the plan really talks about wanting to encourage that to continue. It also talks about the need to activate our public spaces. And this is, again, to design them accessibly and encourage those social interactions so that folks come together, build bonds, and aren't feeling isolated by themselves. Last chapter is related to preservation. It really focuses on safeguarding our historic buildings and neighborhood to, again, maintain Evanston architectural and cultural legacy. The plan does promote adaptive reuse of existing buildings, so allowing them to be repurposed from maybe existing use that is no longer necessary. And it also encourages more community participation and preservation efforts. Again, this is one of the balancing acts in terms of balancing growth with maintaining and preserving the history here in Evanston. So that is the plan in a nutshell. I just want to talk a little bit about how this then converts into zoning. And then I'll open it up for questions. I promise I'm almost done. So the future land use map that I mentioned is kind of the overarching framework. And then that gets applied to different zoning districts. So here in Evanston today, we have about 34 different zoning districts or overlay districts. That's a lot of zoning districts. It makes it very, very complicated for property owners to understand what the rules are, what they can realize on their home. It also makes it very difficult to administer, and it's not very predictable for anybody involved. So one of the goals of this process and one of the things we've heard from the community is we need to make it less complicated. We need to make it more simpler. So what we have currently proposed is 17 zoning districts. So the map that I just showed on the, let's see, right-hand side of the screen, proposed zoning, translates into these 17 districts. So we are looking at 4 residential districts. The number that follows the district basically indicates the level of intensity of the uses that could be developed. So for the residential districts, R1, the proposal is to allow up to 4 housing units on a lot, where a lot of these districts currently only allow, well, they all allow 1. R2, again, is very similar to the R1 proposed district, allowing up to 4 dwelling units, but recognizing that our built environment has a lot of diversity in terms of how land was subdivided and the existing homes that are on them. So really the goal of this is to make more properties within Evanston conforming to our rules, because right now, most of them, especially in the R1 district, for example, 50% do not meet our minimum lot size requirement of 7,200 square feet. That means that 50% of them have smaller lots than what our rules require today. So it's been arbitrarily applied and is not consistent with what is actually there. And as I was walking here tonight, I know this is anecdotal. I live in the 9th Ward. I walked along Asbury, and the east side, I counted 8 either duplexes or I think there was 1 triplex, so 3-unit home along just the east side. I didn't even touch the west side of the block. So I would say that the 9th Ward is a very good representation of what the new rules could potentially realize in terms of having a diverse mix of housing within a neighborhood. And personally, me and my family, again, it's not about me, it's about what all of you think, but we love it. You know, we love the fact that you can walk down the street, you see a 2-flat, you see a single family home, you see larger buildings. It fits, it works really, really well. And I think this is a great example of what these rules are trying to achieve. So I'm going to stop and open it up for questions. For those who have reviewed the plan, I do have, you know, or even what you heard tonight, you know, what's great? What do you want to see stay the same? Where do you think the plan or the rules need to be adapted to better align with your vision for Evanston in 2045? And what's missing? You know, what can we make sure that we're including as this process moves forward? And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Your presentation is far more realistic than the previous one, and what comes to mind, I sit on Evanston's ADA advisory group, and so I don't see this in the plan, but as the population gets older and older, maybe I got a chance for this one. I'll only be 104 years old. Okay. But anyway, that has to be considered, and things have to be made easier for us older folks and those that are have various disadvantages. All right. What else? Regarding zoning, I believe the present zoning has been shelved until February. Maybe Juan can. Pardon?
I can speak to that.
Okay. So it falls after the mid-January event, and so you know, the city is proceeding at this. One of the things that you're dealing with is obviously you want to retain buildings and so on and so forth. We are plagued with old streets and so on and so forth, where we're trying to squeeze in both driving and biking and all the rest of that routine. It's too bad that we can't remove everything and have wide boulevards. So there's a lot that's involved with this. Okay. So, all right, I've said enough. Anyway, thank you very much.
No, I appreciate that. There is a lot to this. And I think it's important to note that just because we didn't update or look at the comprehensive plan for 20, almost 30 years previously, doesn't mean that that needs to be the status quo of how we proceed here in Evanston. Comprehensive plans should be evaluated on a regular basis. We should be identifying how we're trending in terms of the goals that we've set out. We should be removing policies and actions that we've adopted as a city. So, you know, I appreciate, you know, the understanding that this is very dynamic. There's a lot of constraints or things that come into play that are very difficult to predict. But one of the great things about a comprehensive planning document is that you can go back and reflect and say, are we still trending how we thought we were going to trend in 2023 or 2024? And it gives us a benchmark and a tool to evaluate whether or not we're headed in the right direction. So I appreciate that. And then in terms of the timeline, so last week, the Land Use Commission has been working on reviewing these drafts, so both the comprehensive plan and the draft zoning code. And after the first hearing, the Land Use Commission made a recommendation to hold off on discussing the text amendment or the zoning code piece of Envision Evanston 2045 until they have voted and made a recommendation on the comprehensive plan. And so that the text amendment for the zoning code has been tabled until January 22nd. So they will begin to review it again, and there will be public meetings in January. We are working with the Land Use Commission chair to identify the schedule beyond January 22nd. As soon as staff knows what that schedule is, we will make sure that we promote that to the community. I do want to mention, if you have not already signed up for notices about this initiative, if you go to the envisionevanston2045.com page, scroll down to the bottom, there's a button that says subscribe, and you can sign up for electronic notifications either through text or email to get notices whenever we do an update, so you can stay informed. I'd also mention that we do have a survey out there if you want to provide more detailed feedback on the draft plan or the draft zoning regulations. This is really the phase where we want to hear as much feedback as possible. We have written down details, we've gone out in the community, we've heard a lot of opinions, but now the details are written down, and it's important that everybody shares their feedback so that it can ultimately be the best product for the community at large. Any other questions? Anyone online?
One more thing. Keep in mind, there's supposed to be new housing at 910 Custer Street, and then next to me that's idiotic because you're right next to the UP Metro stop there, and tell me how the locomotives, how the noise and vibration are going to be felt in that building. Anyway, and then we have some low rise that's in the downtown area, and we should avoid overdevelopment in the downtown. There's rental or there's vacancies in stores downtown, but Central Street West is vibrating now. So this could redirect your attention to the future of this city.
No, that's a great point. We do have so many different diverse business districts and, community centers here in Evanston, and they all function and flourish in different ways. And so go ahead. You want to say something else?
One more thing. Juan might not respond to this. What if Evanston is doing all this, what is Northwestern University doing? What are they planning for 2045? And, we are stuck with Ryan Field in this unholy relationship that Evanston has with Northwestern University.
Ooh, you want to take that one, council member, or would you like me to do here? Okay, note for the record, council member is recusing himself from this question. No, I'm just teasing. So we have had conversations with Northwestern University, and one of the things that the proposed zoning districts do is really recognize how the university can become an asset and bridge to our downtown. And so there is a new district that is proposed along Elgin and Clark, which is kind of being viewed as a transition area. And in terms of future programming, we heard a lot from the community that they don't want to see Northwestern buy up any more land and take it off the tax rolls. And so one way to promote that or incentivize that they stay within their current boundaries is to recognize their programming needs over the next 20 years and make sure that the rules that we have balance not only protecting the impacts of their operations and uses from the residential neighborhoods, but also encouraging them to realize the needs that they have for their university without expanding out into the community more. So the proposed regulations do try to balance their needs with the community and achieve that goal of not increasing their land base over time. And also, as I mentioned, that bridge between the downtown, recognizing that they could help support future revitalization. So I hope that answered your question. Anyone else?
All right. Okay, so I'm not gonna go. Have you received my, did you get my email that I sent? My name is Leslie. Okay, okay. Well, I will give you a copy of it. And I'm not gonna go into it here. Nothing you said to me is wrong. I love every word that came out of your mouth. I thoroughly disagree that this zoning code will do what your words say. It absolutely will not. This is what I do for a living. It will not do that. I have an issue with the process. I totally understand where we are. We're at this point. I feel like calling it a public hearing was a huge mistake if that wasn't what you intended it to be. A public hearing for adoption of a zoning code when a comprehensive plan has not yet been adopted is, I mean, you're a planner. It's wrong. You don't do that. The zoning code needs to follow the comprehensive plan. And if the comprehensive plan is adopted, then you can implement the zoning. So I'm not saying you can't write it at the same time, but you absolutely cannot adopt it at the same time. It's just not right. It doesn't give the community an opportunity to share their feedback on the comprehensive plan and the process in terms of adoption. And it also doesn't allow the zoning code to be thoroughly informed. My other question, well, I haven't asked a question yet, so I'll ask a question. Maybe I won't go there. In terms of the public hearing processes, were you anticipating that the Land Use Commission was going to move forward with adoption, or was it just meant to be the sort of public?
No. Absolutely. Great question. So the Land Use Commission is not the adopting body. They are a recommending body. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I think that, in terms of the process, this was part of the request for proposals that went out. This was part of the contract that the city council ultimately authorized staff to pursue. And so staff has remained very flexible and has recognized that this is an iterative process throughout. And we really have been listening to the community, our elected officials, our city administration in terms of how we adapt and pivot throughout the process. But, I personally think that it's really important for the community to focus on the content of what has been drafted at this point. I hear you. Process is always something that we can talk about and we can refine and we can make better. But it would be unfortunate if we all focus on how we don't like the process in light of, we have a draft here. So again, I can't change what happened up until this point, but what I can say is that the Land Use Commission has basically done what you're saying. And I would argue that one of the things that doing them concurrently will address is the fact that if there are changes to the zoning map, once this goes through that impact the future land use map, we automatically have an inconsistency there. So that's one of the reasons why, they were put together so that they can concurrently be evaluated and addressed in tandem. So I guess that's what I would offer at this point. I hear you, but we're here. And let's continue to focus on how we can make this better with what we have drafted currently. I am remembering now your correspondence. I think if I remember, you're a planner and you did a bunch of work over Thanksgiving, and I remember the mock-ups that you did. So that's the type of feedback we need to hear, and we appreciate you taking that time. Staff shares a lot of concerns in terms of what is drafted currently. We want to make it better too. So we're working together with the community to ensure that it's the best product based on the timeline that we've been given.
And I can speak a little bit to the timeline thing. I think, like me personally, it is like a race towards the finish and doing them kind of concurrently. My concern was I didn't want us to end up in the situation like we currently have with the downtown plan, that we have a plan that was adopted, but they never did the actual zoning changes. And there's a couple spots in town where like we get things at council, and it's like there's conflicting information, and it's like it's such a big project, like, you know, Fred kind of touched upon, you know, elections can cause uncertainty. So, you know, we didn't want to end up in a spot where you are halfway done with the project and then it just never gets done, or gets done in a way that does not align with.
So do you understand where I'm coming from? In that as a resident, my husband signed up and we went to some of the meetings and such. He was supposed to take over. As a resident, I know.
Yeah.
Really frustrating. As a resident, it was posted as done. It seemed like it was posted as done. The first draft of the comprehensive plan, which again, I think it could have been a lot better. I think the words are good, but in terms of modern comprehensive plans that are done today, it's half the cost. It should have been half the cost of what you paid. And it doesn't have a single, I mean, I gotta say this. It doesn't have a photo of Evanston in it yet.
It's one of my biggest pet peeves right now. Yep.
But I think that the documents were posted and then posted as going to public hearing with less than a month for review and Thanksgiving in there. And then, you know, the two adoption meetings were in December. So my heart raced because when this RFP came out, I totally said, I'm not going after this. Evanston's too close to me. I can't be involved, even though I would love to be involved. And I reached out and said, I'm happy to volunteer my services. I recall that every good zoning writer that I know and asked them to submit because I was afraid. You had at least one submittal that I knew that would have resulted in a much better product. Don't understand the choice, whatever. But the fact that I really kind of trusted the process and trusted the price and trusted, you know, that we would get to this point and that we were all, you know, smart people, and then got such a poor product and with very little time to review it and to respond. I was at my own adoption meeting this week. I couldn't come to the land use commission because of that. And, you know, I think, I'm sorry to rant, I'm pretty emotional about this because, you know, I really trusted, and then I kind of got screwed. And I'm here tonight after having traveled all last week, been to 2 adoption meetings, and had the stomach flu every weekend. And yesterday was my 60th birthday, and I'm here tonight. I'm just like, hello. I mean, I'm trying to express to you my concern, and there is so much good work that could be done to make this what it needs to be. Evanston has done so many wonderful things in the past, and I'm proud to say it's my home. I mean, I tell everybody across the country, it's my home. If this is where we end up, I'm not going to be able to show my face.
I mean, like Leslie, I really appreciate your feedback on all this, and there's some stuff we can talk about going forward. But like, I think, and one of the things we're also really have been, and I don't know if this is the communication piece, like when, like this is truly like as much as I want to make these changes because there's a lot of really exciting changes to happen, we do have to have something that is not a draft. And I remember we had a meeting, like, I think before the holidays, where, you know, everyone is saying like, we're going to release this, but people have to realize it's a draft. So it's still being worked on. But like, it's still a living document. If there's things that, you know, we're looking for feedback. So that's one of the like things I'm hearing, like, you know, like that, you know, the feedback is like a show, but no, it's like, we want people to be comfortable with it. So like having these meetings around kind of what does it mean for the for the community and like your neighborhood. I know I've fielded, a handful of calls because people are like business owners are a little bit worried about potential changes and that, legacy zoning is going to stay the same. Like if something changes, your business isn't going to have to move out. So there's things like that we really have to have engagement. And, I had a, phone call with, business owner that like, yeah, we're going to have like a side meeting just because people are nervous because, it's, you can probably read a zoning document and code and it's okay, but like for the vast majority of Evanstonians, they don't. So, I mean, it's going to be, I personally think we should work as hard as we can to get to where we need to be as soon as possible. But we shouldn't pass something that people are uncomfortable with. So that's,
Understood. I think, there's obvious a lot that we could do better. And, I think that, as the council member said, we are intentionally here to get feedback. Staff, was spending their Thanksgiving as well, working on what we're hearing from the community and the Land Use Commission. I myself personally have been working a lot of extra hours, as I'm sure you can relate, to ensure that we are representing what we're hearing in the community as this moves through the process. It's always been our intention to iteratively address all of the concerns and revise things as we go on. So just again, thank you. No, don't apologize. This is one of there are many things I love about Evanston, and the passion of community members is at the top of my list, in addition to the generosity. I mean, you didn't have to take your holiday to share your professional expertise, but you did, and you did it pro bono, and that's amazing. Like, I've had authors reach out to me, it's like, can I help you copy edit this? Like, that's amazing. Like, that is the power of community, and that's what this is about. It's not just the city of Evanston that will implement this. It's every single one of you with your investments in your properties. It's all of the business owners. And again, it's really to achieve that overarching vision for the future, and have something we can all be proud of. So hang in there with us. We're really trying hard to represent you appropriately.
so at this point, I think I don't see any other questions. I will stop the recording and thank you all online and future YouTube viewers for tuning in.